And we're back. You're watching Sports Federation TV on Channel 263 DSTV. We had rowing before the break, and right now, from a sport that needs wide open waters, we're back with a sport that needs four walls. And we'd like to welcome Duncan de Groot from Squash, Western Province. Hello, Duncan.
Hi there. Thanks very much for the opportunity.
Welcome to the show, and this is not your first time here. Hey.
No, I've been here once before. I came here about a year ago.
About a year ago. Yeah. Okay, well, we hope there's been a lot of great changes since then. For the viewers at home, if you could describe the sport of squash, how would you do that?
Well, for those people who don't know squash, it's a little bit like tennis, a little bit, but indoors. So days like we had yesterday and today with a little bit of rain, where you can't play tennis, it's a game that you can go and play indoors. So a very simple sport, one racket, one ball, two players, and off you go. 45 minutes, a very good aerobic workout. So it's a pretty straightforward, simple game. And in Western Province, we're fortunate that we've probably got the most participants in the whole of South Africa from a league perspective.
Western Province? Western
Province, yeah. That goes all the way from youth squash, which we might talk about just now, starting off at under 11 age. So kids about 9 years old are probably starting to get into provincial structures and go on to interprovincials around the country, all the way up to master squash, which is from over 35 all the way up to probably about 80 years old plus.
Before we talk about the children showing more and more interest in the sport, the word squash, do you have any idea where it's originated from?
That's a very good question. The Afrikaans word for it is meerbal, which makes a lot more sense because in essence it's wall ball. Because it can go back a long way. That it came from rackets. There's a whole probably 5 or 6 different traditional racket sports that started off in the UK in England, and that was one of the games that came out of those traditional games. So I don't know where squash itself came from, but Afrikaans, like they often do, has probably a more descriptive.
Do you think it has anything to do with
the ball being squashed?
Or soft?
Or soft, possibly, yeah. Although in North America they have hardball squash, so that's actually with a very hard ball.
Okay.
So it all different types.
A question for another time. So just to backtrack a little bit, you were talking about the impressive numbers we have in Western Province for squash.
Yeah.
And you alluded to the children being more involved.
Yeah.
Are we seeing the schools catering or coming on board with the sport? Is that what is happening?
I wouldn't say coming on board. I would say they've been on board for a very long time. We're very fortunate in South Africa generally. And in the Western Cape, we've got a very strong aspect of that as well. But the school squash scene, an organisation in South Africa is very mature. It's very developed, and it's very extensive. As I said, you start with kids at primary learners at primary school, all the way up to matric, and 11 and 13, 14, 16, 19. Are playing into provincials around the country for the better players, but throughout the clubs, and we've got over 30 clubs in the Western Cape. Most of those clubs would have some kind of youth program or encouragement to get the youth to play, because that is your pipeline. You've got to ensure that you continue having new players, and obviously some of the parents will have their children coming along, and then we see more and more. So traditionally, been a very strong aspect of it. But the area that is receiving a fair amount of focus at the moment is the development side of it, and to try to, because it's schools driven, and you can't go put a squash court up everywhere. So we've tend to have found that the youth players come from traditional schools, come from established schools to a large extent, and what SA school squash and Western Province squash as well is trying to do is trying to access other players from non-traditional schools, and that's where Sioli Waters, who's one of our top players in South Africa, who's been on the show here before as well, she's very involved in trying to develop that developmental side of the game through an initiative called eKapa Squash.
So in terms of the facilities
Yes.
and having the facilities
Yeah.
available
Yeah.
to say everybody and not, as you so nicely put it, traditional schools only, because I'm sure there's a massive amount of talent that you're unable to tap into at the moment. So we're looking at mostly, well, the established schools, the old schools, and well, your middle income, higher income group schools at the moment.
So traditionally, that's one of the challenges that squash has, is that traditionally it's been a slightly higher up the LSM curve type of sport, and that's something that we're trying to desperately address. The problem is you can't go and put a structure down very quickly, because it costs a lot of money to put one down in an area, because it's all good and well to put something down, but you've got to maintain it. And if you don't maintain it, then you in essence are wasting that investment. So what's happening at the moment is that we bring people in, not just to the schools, but to the clubs as well. So villages, in Claremont, that's where Cioli works out of. They have an ongoing development program, and what we're doing then is that we are transporting people into the existing venues, and what's very exciting is that we're finding that some of those youth players are starting to come through to the provincial structures, which is fantastic and excellent. And then it brings in the next challenge, which is a funding challenge.
So this is one of the great development programs that Squash Western Province is busy with. Are there any other programs?
Fishhook is doing a nice program at the moment as well. Western Province Cricket Club has ongoing programs. Milnerton has done a few as well. So it tends to be more the clubs than the schools. Although a lot of the non-traditional schools, if we want to call it that, are involved in leagues, because the schools have leagues and they go and play throughout the Western Cape. But again, you have to play where there are facilities. So it is an area that does get focus, but as we're a minor sport, we'd love to be cricket or rugby or soccer like that. The reality is, though, that it's a funding issue, not just to help those developmental players on an ongoing basis, but as importantly to assist the more competent players when they start getting into the provincial structures, because the way it works is that the individuals pay to go and play in an interprovincial, and we're trying to get to a position where we can assist those players, so that if they're good enough to go, we aren't stopping them going purely from a financial for financial reasons. That to me can't be right.
So the main constraint is financial.
Yeah.
For the children that have had access, that don't come from the traditional schools, in your experience or in your exposure to them being exposed to the sport, what does it mean for them? Is it met with a lot of excitement and a lot of passion?
It is. The way one tends to do these the best is to try to bring a whole bunch of potential players in, and you do it on a consistent basis. And what you'll find is that those who are interested in it keep on coming, and those who find after a couple of times that it's not really for them, don't. And that's how you try to get to a position where you can highlight the ones who show an interest. And I think it's a great outlet. It's good exercise. You're starting to meet new people. You're getting you're helping your hand-eye coordination. You're helping your general fitness, and I think it's very well received. But that requires people to run it, and so we're very thankful for the likes of Cioli and Natalie Tudhope, Teresa Lartigan and stuff like that, people like that who are driving these projects.
Okay, excellent. You said that Western Province has the highest numbers in the country. Do we also produce some of the best athletes in the sport?
Yeah, we do. We're going through a little bit of a change at the moment in the men's side. We've got to a kind of a natural point where some of our players are becoming slightly longer in the tooth and are being replaced by younger players. But our ladies, especially, as I've said about Cioli, Cioli is ranked. She's one of the top players, top couple of players in the country. Alex Fuller is also from the Western Cape. She's currently in the final of the Central Gauteng Open. In fact, that's taking place in a few hours' time. against another person who doesn't play for us but lives in Cape Town, Morne Low. So over the last couple of years, we've had 2 of the ladies national champions. So I think we're holding our own in the Western Cape.
Your league has just begun. Hey.
Leagues have just begun. It's always a bit of a difficult time of year because we start and then we have public holidays and then we have Easter and the rest. But we've just started. We've got 16 men's leagues, so that's 160 teams, roughly on a Tuesday night or Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday playing. We've got 5 ladies leagues, so that's another 50 sides there. We've got 5 masters leagues, so that's another 50. So we've probably got on a weekly basis probably about 1,000 players playing league on an ongoing basis. So we're quite happy with that.
What is the most popular age group in the sport?
I think we're very similar to a number of other sports where as I said earlier, we've got a very strong youth structure, and I've got 2 young kids, so I know how it works to an extent that we drive our kids around and we take them to the tournaments and to stuff like that. And so it's a very strong youth system, and then we have to work quite hard at keeping them in the structure once they get to university or outside of school, because suddenly they don't have the same kind of driving force behind them. And then we tend to find that we pick them up again towards the late 20s. So it's probably 30 plus, which is worrying in a way, because we need to make sure we get in those 18-year-olds to continue until, if they can keep on playing until they're 25, 26, we'll have them. It's when they go to the universities and the technicons and gap years and experience life out there. So that's the challenge.
Okay, so when you're marketing the sport in terms of its, firstly, what are the physical and say mental advantages of being involved in a sport like this?
Physically, it's as demanding as you want to be. I mean, at the very top level, I equate it to...
Is it cardio?
It's very cardio. So at professional level, they will have a match that probably lasts for an hour and a half, maybe, and during which stage they have 4 breaks of 2 minutes in an hour and a half.
4 breaks of 2
4 breaks of 2 minutes in an hour and a half. So it is very highly physical. It's very highly, very cardio, very aerobic. 45 minutes and you can have a real proper workout. And
socially?
Socially, it's very social, depending on how social you want to be. But most of the clubs, that's where they come into their own. A squash court is a squash court. But what makes the league different and league exciting and league interesting is going to different clubs and meeting people that you might have met over the years. But certainly very social. For the youth, I think it is a fantastic learning tool, and it's a very daunting environment. If you're a little kid, generally courts are sunk to a way. So generally the gallery is above you, and for a youngster, even if they're 13, 14, 15, so not even the 9, 10-year-olds, you're kind of by yourself, you and your opponent, and a lot of people watching you. And it can be a very daunting environment, and I think it's a very good lesson to those youngsters to learn how to cope with stress and strain, and at the same time hopefully get to a stage where they realize, you know what, it's not that important, it's not that serious, but if we can get some learnings out of it, it's fantastic. So I think it's a very good sport for exercise, for hand-eye coordination, for adversity.
So. As an administrator, and it's important to learn from administrators from all the different sport codes, when you're pitching the sport, I mean, especially that you've mentioned that you have a growing younger population, who do you pitch to, the parents or the child?
The reality is the parents. The reality of the parents are the ones that, I mean, youth squash is principally funded by the parents, to be honest, because you put a tournament on, the parents will enter and the parents will pay. In fact, it's the easiest tournament to run because the parents will pay and they're normally very keen. So yes, you are pitching it to the parents. I think from a pure fundraising perspective, from a corporate perspective, it's a pretty good news story if we look at our and the two senior interprovincials are Jarvis and Kaplan Cup, and especially our Jarvis and Seoli. Let's be honest, from a demographic perspective, it's a pretty. We can do a lot better, but it's a pretty well represented sport. So it's.
Do you mean demographically?
Demographically, yeah. Especially on the men's side, and Seoli's is doing really strong work on the ladies' side from a playing perspective. But on the men's side, it was a very good story, and it continues to be a very good story, and it has a very big reach. As I said, we've got over 1,000 players each week, and take the youth out. We go back to the LSM argument or discussion, and you generally tend to have a good caliber of participants in the sport. So you've got a good medium to promote to.
Okay, so squash is not yet in the Olympics, and just like many other sports that are trying to get into, it's been a long road for you guys. Any light at the end of the tunnel?
Without getting too political about this, but I think we have to get a little bit political about it. They've had a change at the top of the World Squash Federation, and if my ear is close enough to the ground, my understanding is that there was political differences. I'm trying to be as
politically correct as possible.
My understanding was that there were political differences with some of the senior administrators in World Squash and the International Olympic Committee. There has been a change now. There's no rational reason that squash is not in the Olympics. It is a transportable sport. If you follow the professional circuit, they will plonk a glass court in front of the pyramids. They plonk one in the middle of Grand Central Station in New York. They have one at Canary Wharf. So it is something that can go wherever you want to. We would love to have one down here. We would have it on Camps Bay Beach, or we would have it, with the mountain as a backdrop. It's a transportable sport. It is a sport that is played in 150 countries around the world. It's one that it caters for 9-year-olds to 85-year-olds.
Okay.
I'm quite confident that it'll get there.
Okay, I'm sure all the little sports are holding thumbs to get into the Olympics eventually. So from the Olympics to something closer to home, you've got a championship coming up, a seniors championship.
Yeah, so we have a PSA event, a Professional Squash Association event, that's coming up towards the end of April. That's the Keith Granger. That's what's currently being run in Johannesburg. There's a bit of a circuit, so that's the Central Gauteng Open, and this is the UCT Open. So that is a $5,000 event. So obviously the PSA events need to have dollar prize money, and that's very majorly run by the students. It's one of the UCT Squash Club. It's one of the main portfolios of UCT Squash Clubs that the students run it, and Kerr Rogers, the squash administrator at UCT, is very strong on the students, organising the accommodation for the visiting players, because there'll be players from India and Egypt and throughout the world coming, and I think that's probably just a good life lesson for students as well. So that takes place, I think it's from the 22nd to the 29th of April at the UCT courts. So if anybody's wanting to see good squash, that's certainly a place to go. And what they do at the same time there is they're incorporating that with Western Province Masters Championships. They're trying to run a junior one as well. So really it's one that covers the age range from the youth all the way up to the Masters.
Okay, so Duncan, if people want to get more deeper information about your sport, how to get involved, or even your upcoming tournaments that they can come and watch as spectators, where can they go?
Two places: the website www.westernprovincesquash, WP Squash.co.za, or alternatively they can phone the Western Province Squash office 021 674 6717, I think that's right, 674-6717. Glenda Erasmus is the administrator, and she's been doing this for a very long time. So she's got all the information you need to know about anything. But Western Province Squash, WP Squash,
Okay, Duncan. Thank you very much for joining us. We wish
pleasure.
you luck with all your development efforts to make the sport more accessible to everybody. Okay.
Thanks very much.
All right. Well, that's all from Squash, Western Province, but don't go anywhere. We'll see you after the break.